All right, this is it. The final iteration of my Volume 4 and 5 Jaune Arc Cosplay Showcase series. So, as you know, for this final one, I really wanted to end strong. And so I've got his sword and sheath. It does not extend like it does in the show. I just wanted to have the sheath by my side and the sword to, just display as is. So yeah, I guess I'll go with the sheath first because that's a little bit simpler to go over than the sword. I had to do a couple new techniques for it, so I'll go over those in the second part of the video. So for the sheath, most of it is made out of masonite, which is a thin, kind of like plywood, only it's more fibrous. And the reason I chose it is because you don't get that wood grain finish that you do with plywood. So it's also a lot thinner, and I was able to keep the width of the sheath, pretty low profile, which is what I wanted. My first go at it, it was very, very bulky, and I just didn't like the look of it. So I went with the masonite to make it thinner, and then the outer walls are all made. That is plywood, or no, is that plywood? Yeah, it's just made from a sheet of wood, the same density as the sword. So I knew that it would be, like, when I put the sword in, it would be a very, very close fit. So that was made by, I basically just put the sword down, traced the outline, and then traced a border around that. And that little, that border, so it goes pretty much all the way down here, angles down, angles back up, and comes back up. It's all one piece, but you could do it in sections. I just did it in one piece because it's easier. And as you can see on the back, gotta turn on the little LED light. Helps out a little bit. Okay, there we go. Yeah, as you can see on the back, I stapled it initially, but in between that, so I finished both sides with wood glue in between, and after that, any imperfections were sanded down, so they were all one concise piece. And yeah, it was actually fairly simple to do. He has a little bit more detailing on the sword and the sheath than he did in volumes 1 through 3. So I just kind of eyeballed it, if I'm being honest. The way I got these curves, though, is that I got just a dinner bowl and I traced a curve. It just happened to be the right arc that I wanted. You can use pretty much anything you need. Like, I've got this weird flashlight thingy, so that could turn that off. You can use pretty much anything you have as a template, like the flip a plate upside down. You can use that to get this. That would probably work better, actually. Again, this, I did the same thing. I just put a bowl on top of it, traced, move it up a little, trace again, and they're all pretty much the same arc. So, Jaune Arc. So, yeah, you can keep that, and I also blood splattered it with the same technique that I talked about in all my previous videos, and gave it the same black border to be consistent with the rest of the armor. As for the paint job, I also plasti dipped this. I didn't need to. I could have just gone with white acrylic, but I wanted to have the same feel as the rest of the armor, so it's all one cohesive theme. And on the back, you can see I just epoxied, or no, I don't think that's epoxy. I think that's just super glue. Yeah, I just super glued a piece of leather so I could add an angle so that it would fit kind of like that. So I could feed my my actual belt underneath the sash and the fake belt. So I guess I've got like 3 belt things in total. And yeah, so that just keeps it in place, and that'll pretty much do it for the sheath. This was a pretty simple build. Again, if you have any specific questions, I will be more than willing to answer those in the comments if I glossed over anything. I know I'm going pretty quick. That's just because technically I have 2 things to showcase, but yeah, that'll do it for this. Now, the sword, this was a lot of fun to do. It was also kind of, excuse me, kind of tough to do because I'd never done Dremeled detail like this, or I actually hollowed out this whole handguard so that this blade could slide through it and they could all connect in the middle, and then you just fill that well with epoxy. And as you can see by looking down it, you may be able to see, let's see, well, the sword's kind of blocking it, but it's got an arc to it, like it's thin at the ends but thick in the middle. And that was just I used, what kind of wood did I use for that? I think, okay, I think this was a 2x4 that I sanded down, and then this was a 1x4. So yeah, and honestly, the way I did it, I actually totally shouldn't have been doing this. OSHA would have had a fit. I got my dad's belt sander and I flipped it upside down and bungee corded it to a piece of wood on my sawhorses and just made a really sketchy sanding table. And then you just you mark out on the sides, like you would have marked like here and here, and you know, like, okay, that's as far down as I can sand. And so you just you finish it on both sides a similar way. And this is just like a the end of a garden rake, I think, or something like that. It's just a rounded dowel rod, really. That again, this part is actually hollow, so that the blade and the handle can slide in, and then I just epoxy it once I know everything's in the right position. And as for the blade itself, like I said, it's a piece of 1x that I traced the design on, I think, a piece of poster board, because that would have been a good density to use as a template. And it does have that kind of wood grain look to it. You can really see it shine through there. But if you do have that, technically the best way to have that wood grain showing is to have it vertical, or no, that's what I have. I have it vertical. Is to do it horizontally, because when you what is it? When you would sharpen a sword, the grain would kind of look like it was going horizontal. I didn't do that just because it's a little more structurally sound to do it vertically, but it's also got the gold bloodwell in here that you know, I just got a yardstick, trace it out, and then with a Dremel, you just kind of carve that out. If you don't already have one, absolutely invest in a Dremel. It's really good for finishing foam, carving out wood, especially these detail pieces. And these were not tough to do, just a little tedious and kind of frustrating, because, you know, doing it all by hand and not having really a template to go by, there's gonna be those small imperfections or inconsistencies from one side to another. But if you get the general look for it, usually you'll be okay. And these pieces, they should actually, again, this was actually kind of a rush job, which is why I'm rushing the description on how I made it. It's because I honestly, I was kind of winging it the whole time. But overall, I think it came out pretty well. Like, the end really should be more detailed. I think this was the last thing I worked on since, yeah, I was getting ready for MomoCon. And I realized, you know, if I had the armor all done, I'd be fine. If I had the time for the sword and sheath, great, but it's not the end of the world if I didn't. I actually started this 2 days before the convention started. So this was a very rushed job. But you know, see, I also had fun with like the nicks here. Like, I think you can see on the other side. Let's see, where was it? Okay, yeah. So right here at the end, the Dremel kind of jumped to the bloodwell, so it made a little inconsistency in it. So I decided to roll with it and just made wherever I kind of screwed up a little bit, I would just carve it more and make it look like a gash or a nick in the sword. And then, you know, you add in the personal ones, and these weren't even done with any like power tools. The wood was soft enough to where I could just get like a what's it called? A utility knife, and just at like a 15-degree angle, cut this, and then meet in the middle, and then you can shave it away kind of. Even you could even like chisel away at it if you have a nice set. And yeah, and then you can see some of the gashes, they also have that black border to be consistent in aesthetics. So yeah, these pieces should be raised at the end, but I was rushed for time, so they're just small strips of craft foam with a little black Sharpie dot, all glued into the right position. And let's see, what else can I talk about? Oh yeah, so the way that I got the edge to it, it's pretty much the same thing I did with this. Is I just went to that sanding table and I marked on top and on the sides like how deep I needed to go to sand. Because if you go past it, then you have to do the same thing on the other side for consistency, but it'll screw up the overall feel and look of the sword. Whoa, that looks weird. You seeing that? Where are those lines? I wonder if that'll show up on video. Oh well. Where was I? Yeah. So the edge, and the way you do that, like you kind of hold the sword at this angle so that the edge is, well, where the edge is going to end up is flat against the sander. And then you put one hand on top and you just go back and forth until you have the right amount shaved off. And yeah, just for a little bit of depth in the sword, let's see, these pieces are also craft foam that have been super glued on. But I had a two-tone approach to the sword, even though technically it's not really like that in the show, but I thought it would just kind of, you know, I just thought it looked good. So the edge is a shinier kind of silver, but the middle is more of a gunmetal finish. And, you know, like I said, it gives it kind of a more unique finish. And I think overall the whole thing came out pretty good. I'll more than likely revisit it once I have some more time on my hands and I can really take my time to make sure it's good. And yeah, you can see all throughout here. I also have that black outline pretty much wherever there's an edge, just to draw attention to the different layers of the sword. And you know, as always, if you have any questions on how I made any piece of the armor, go to that video, leave a comment. I promise I will reply at most after a day or so. I always check the comments on my videos. So yeah, or you know, you could email me. I think that's public on my YouTube site. Also, if you follow me on Instagram, direct message, just any way you get it, you want to get into contact with me, I am more than willing to help you make this armor if that's what you want to do. Another thing, you can see the tip is rounded. I did that intentionally because at MomoCon, they actually didn't let me in the first day because it was too sharp. And with it being a wooden prop, that can actually cause some harm to people if, hypothetically, I were to be careless with it. So I rounded that off at the end of the convention, and I didn't have any problems the next day getting in. But that should do it for the sword and the sheath. So yeah, leave a comment if you have any further questions or, you know, comments on some more video series you want me to do. I'm probably going to do one for my ODST cosplay, but that one might be a little less detailed than this one because I based it off of templates that another YouTuber made. So yeah, keep an eye out for any more content I do. I'll also be doing a lot more live stuff on Instagram, probably uploading things, maybe even from Twitch to YouTube. So you're going to see a lot more varied content these next, I don't know, few years probably, because I'm just working off of a commission now for a lot of my friends who want me to, you know, make pieces for them. So thank you all so much for tuning in, and I will see you again soon.